The next page will give you a general idea, without going through hundreds and hundreds of line items. All right, the budget has been decreased about $822,000. What are the principal changes that brought about that? And I've highlighted them for you. First of all, we have increased payments to the charter schools in the amount of $1,243,000. We have been able to put some new items for instruction in this budget, namely in the area of computer technology. There is a new staff position for a skilled individual who will work with teachers and students in the classrooms district-wide and be a computer person who deals only in teaching kids to use computers, not dealing with the district's administrative network. In addition to that, you may recall that last year we purchased laptop computers for 2 grade levels to be given out to students for their use. They were done through the ARA grant, and this year we have managed to build another $110,000 into the capital outlay budget for that equipment, so that we can do 2 things. We can do another grade level, but also we get it into the hard money budget out of the federal grant, so that each year we can do another grade level without having to spike the budget or create an increase. And we do have small reductions in state and federal grants, and the reductions in the non-salary items amount to about $147,000. That basically is the net result of the final termination of the 2-year ARA money, and there is a slight increase in the Ed Jobs grant money. There is a reduction in many discretionary purchase accounts for supplies, equipment, and services. And finally, there is a total decrease in all salary and benefits of nearly $1 million, $909,193, which is the net over some funding that has been provided for negotiated salary increases, offset by six staff positions eliminated and 14 other staff positions which will be restaffed after retirements. This budget estimates approximately 20 retirements. We have 9 written in hand today, and a number that are confirmed to be working on right now, so we have every reason to believe that's a reasonable number. Last year, for example, we budgeted 17 retirements. We ended up with 34. So we believe that that number is a pretty sound number. The retirements and the staff cuts in terms of positions, not people, should create almost $1 million decrease in the overall salary and benefit accounts. And among other items also, I should mention that for the first time, every staff member, beginning on July 1, will have 1.5% of their salary deducted from pay, and it will be refunded back to the board to reduce the expenses of health benefits. While the number may seem small at 1.5%, it's not 1.5% of the premiums, it's 1.5% of the individual's total salary. That number for us comes to, for all the staff members who receive those benefits, the salary, base salary for those people is about $23 million, and it will generate about $362,000 in revenue, which will go back to reduce the expenses of health benefits. All told, those items alone, those 6 items, account for a decrease of $764,000 out of the $822. It really accounts for about 93% of the change in total expenditures. The next 4 groups of items are an attempt to give you a feel for where does the money come from. The revenue, if you will look at the chart, indicates 61% of the support of this school district still comes from local property tax levy. The state aid is about 29%. Other local money is about 5%, and federal aid about 5%. If the numbers that generated that, if you flip the page, you'll see the tax levy going down about $3,000. That's because of the decline in debt service, but still remaining at a 61% share of the revenue. The state aid figure I want to comment on because in a sense it's a little misleading. I mentioned to you that the state aid increased $481,000. You see a larger number there. The rest of that money just goes to give us extra money for extra kids that the money comes in and we have to spend it. It doesn't go towards our general operating expenses. The two pieces of that are, first of all, choice aid. We take students on a choice basis from other school districts, and we get the money to educate those children from the state of New Jersey. The amount we got last year was about $15,929 per student. The numbers have been increasing, and in the last 3 years, last year we had 10 students. That was in 9, 10, and 10, 11, 2 years ago we had 10 students. Last year we had 40. This year we had 50. The aid is always 1 year behind. So the aid they're certifying for 11, 12 will be based on the increase of 10 students from 40 to 50 in the current year. And you can see 10 students times 15,009 is the extra 160,000. The balance of that is a significant increase in the preschool aid. We had a number of discussions at recent public meetings about this. You'll recall that in 9-10, we had 525 students, and we had about $7 million in aid. In the current year, it was estimated that we would have about 525 students, but we got about 625. And so the costs went up, and the aid that we had certified was based on the estimate only. Fortunately, there was enough money left in the early childhood state money from the old early childhood grants that the state let districts keep. That money was carried over and raised the budget for the current year, even though the aid for this year was $7 million, raised the budget to $8.2 million. Next year, knowing that we have 625, we have estimated to the state 677 students. We have reason to believe that an expected increase of 25 to 50 is not beyond the realm of possibility, and we felt we would certify the number that would protect us. We will get the aid for that, and we will be covered this time around with the increase, hopefully, and not surprised. That drove a significant aid increase in the preschool aid, but again, that money is just to cover additional kids. The federal aid is the difference between the fact that we're getting $311,000, it's actually $311,513 from the federal government on the Ed Grants money. We chose to use that not this year. We had the option of this year, next year, or both. We deferred that money until next year, and we're going to use that to transfer the charge of 4 teacher salaries to that grant for 11-12. Offsetting that increase of $311,000 is the fact that the $1 million we got in ARA money in 9-10, we spent half of the first year, half last year. The net decrease is the loss of half of ARA plus the gain of the Ed Grants money. Finally, I want to comment on the other local, and that has a significant impact on the future budgeting of this school district. You'll see that there is a significant decrease of well over $1.5 million in other local money. Most of that comes from the fact that I am reducing the amount that we appropriate from our surplus or fund balance. The current year's budget used $2,093,000 of monies from surplus to offset taxes, so we didn't have a tax increase. I'm lowering that number to $913,000 in next year's budget because that will leave us still $835,000 at the end of June 30th, 2012, so that when you go to prepare the 2012-13 budget, you already have enough money with that $800,000 to practically match the $900,000 from this year, and you will not have a spike in the tax levy due to a lack of surplus funds. So by reducing the amount appropriated in the current year and leaving an almost equal amount for the next year, you're protected for the 2012-13 budget. Aside from the revenues, I've taken an opportunity to break down the expenses in 2 different ways. One is to look at the amount of the budget that is spent by object of expense. And by object of expense, I mean regardless of the program, how much do you spend for salaries? How much do you spend for equipment? How much for contracted services? How much for consumable supplies? You will note the large amount, 60% for salaries and benefits. You will note a rather large expense, and this is the one that surprised me. Last year I didn't do it this way, but this year I started looking at aggregating the numbers, and it dawned on me that it looked like we certainly spent an awful lot of money contracting out the services we provide for other people to do it. And when you take the money that we pay to the charter schools, it'd be over $6.2 million this year, plus the money we pay to 3 private providers, and there, by the way, there are 3 charter schools. 3 private school providers get $6.9 million for the early childhood programs. There's nearly $500,000 in aid to non-public schools for non-religious purposes. And in addition to that, we spend over $1 million, I believe about $1,166,000, to send special ed children to private schools for the handicapped and other public schools. I was actually amazed when I put all those together and for the first time realized, and I've been here 18 months, I never looked at it this way, out of our $60 million between the charter schools, the early childhood providers, the private schools for the handicapped, the non-public aid, 15 of our $60 million, 25% of the budget, goes to other agencies to provide the educational services. Now, there are a large number of students. The charter school projected enrollment for next year is up to 546 students. The projected preschool program is up to 699 students. We're talking about 21 students to private schools for the handicapped, 7 to other public schools, 1 in a state school. So we do send a lot of our youngsters out. You see most of the other items, supplies, contracted services, are smaller shares of the budget when you look at it by object of expense. And the data that created that chart is given to you on the next page. I do want to make one comment. That is an anomaly, the 30% increase in equipment, because with the large increase in preschool aid, there is a significant amount of about $300,000+ for equipment for the preschool programs. And actually, were it not for that one item paid for by the state, out of the state money, we would actually have a decrease in the equipment we're buying with the local budget as part of the reduction in discretionary expenses that I mentioned previously. The next way of looking at the same expenditure is the programs, and there's another interesting number that jumps out at you when you look at this. It's not really the percent that goes to instruction, 67%, that's quite normal. If anything, maybe 2 or 3% higher than the state average. It's not the amount that goes for support services, 33%. That's pretty normal. What you will notice is that within the instructional programs, the amount for the public school programs in our district has reduced 3% of the budget from 50% of the budget to 47%, and a corresponding increase from 8% to 11% for students in the charter schools. The final bit of information, just many people find it difficult to get a grasp on how many employees a district has and what type of employees, because there are administrators scattered throughout the budget. There's teachers on grants, teachers on board funds. This hopefully will tie a little bit together for you. Not surprisingly, classroom teachers and classroom teacher aides constitute 56% of the staff. Plan operations 10%, clerical 6%. Other professional, and there are your guidance counselors, librarians, nurses, child study team members. They service kids. The parts that are really almost directly dealing with children are the teachers, the aides, and the professional staff, and that's 68% of the staff, and you would expect that. When you looked at this, by object of expense, you saw 61% for salaries. We are a labor-intensive industry. You would expect that, and as unfortunately all homeowners are aware, 60% of the bill, or 61%, is funded by the local taxpayer. I don't think there's anything here that I've seen that's surprising, and the actual numbers that generate that information are found on the next page. Now that is an overview of the budget. It's not my intention tonight to go into details line item by line item. It's to give you a feel for that budget, to give the board a feel for that budget, to point out areas they may wish to focus on within the next 6 weeks.